The Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, has threatened to take legal action against Senate President Godswill Akpabio over his alleged payment of holiday allowances to senators.
The incident leading to this lawsuit transpired during a plenary session on Wednesday when Godswill Akpabio, during a public address to his colleagues, mentioned the disbursement of holiday allowances by the clerk of the National Assembly into the bank accounts of various senators. The Senate President, unaware of the live broadcast, said the distribution of a monetary token was a means to enable the senators enjoy their holidays. We're joined this morning.
We're joined by Kolawole Oluwadare, who's the Deputy Director of SERAP. He'll help us make sense of what's going on. Good morning, Mr. Oluwadare. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning. I'll say that I'm here to make sense of it myself.
We're still struggling. You know, I'm sure Nigerians, of course, understand what, must have played out there. You know, I was saying yesterday that I think what really played out there was Godswill Akpabio not having a hold or a grip of, his new environment. Of course, if it was Ahmad Lawan, he probably would have known not to say it when the cameras were rolling. But Godswill Akpabio is still getting a hold of it. In a few months, he will be able to say those things, more carefully without getting caught, I think.
All right. Anyway, before we get into the conversation proper, let's take a look at the video and what was said.
As soon as Senator Ogbonmwan takes his oath of office, we shall rearrange the office of the leadership. In order to enable all of us to enjoy our holidays, a token has been sent to our various accounts by the clerk of the National Assembly. I withdraw that statement. In order to allow you to enjoy your holiday, the Senate President has sent prayers to your mailboxes. I send prayers to your mailboxes to assist you to go on a safe journey and return. This Senate.
All right, this has been an ongoing conversation that has sparked reactions on social media and has obviously led you to sue SERAP. Yesterday we had a guest on the show to talk about this, and his position was that he doesn't see why Nigerians are triggered by this video. And Nigerians are acting like we don't know that the National Assembly already has a budget that was already allocated to them. And regardless of what is happening, I think that the right question should be to ask what exactly is this money for? What is the money exactly for? Where is it coming from, as opposed to being rattled or being upset by what has happened? I want to find out your thoughts on this.
Yes, it's unfortunate that this situation, the malfeasance in governance, has developed to this stage where we sensationalize these kind of issues. The issue is basically about transparency and accountability. If Nigerians know, for instance, that every time that the Senate, the National Assembly, goes on recess, XYZ amount of money will be paid as part of their statutory allowances, I doubt it will generate this kind of reaction. So it borders on transparency and accountability, particularly within the context of the rising cost of living, occasioned by the removal of subsidy, and the failure of those in public offices to lead by example, by cutting the cost of governance from the public officer perspective. And this is what has given rise to sensationalizing issues like this. And we must understand clearly, when we speak about the lack of transparency and accountability, that in this instance, the only knowledge available to the Nigerian public, at least in the public domain, is the bulk, the amount of money that has been allocated to the National Assembly by way of statutory transfer in the Appropriation Act 2022. The details of such spendings are not public. So, for instance, we do not know how much of that 228 billion, how much is recurrent expenditure, from where allowances such as this will be drawn, and how much is capital expenditure, which of course will mean some of those things that will be taken care of in the National Assembly, the buildings and all that. That is what has led us to this point, where any kind of information that is senator or a member of that rep is getting what triggers this kind of reaction. And the cure for it, really, is transparency and accountability, just by saying it, but demonstrating that commitment to letting Nigerians know. But surprised. This is not surprising at all. If from the highest office in the land, the office of the president, we do not know how much Nigeria has recovered by way of Abacha notes more than 10 years after we've had that loot recovered from various countries, then why are we surprised that we do not even know how much a senator takes home, how much he earns as allowance, and the medium, the basis, call it the legal basis for all these kind of allowances? Unfortunately, this will go on for a very long time.
Ms. Oluwadare, do you think, at some point Nigerians will feel, deeply betrayed by these politicians who promised them renewed hope and, created this image of themselves as they were coming in to, fix the challenges Nigeria was dealing with, and of course told Nigerians that they need to suffer for a little while, to make Nigeria better. There's a lot of changes that the country has to go through, and so they would need to tighten their belt and suffer for a little while. Do you feel that Nigerians will feel betrayed? And at what point do you think that Nigerians would maybe call this a complete hoax, generally?
Unfortunately, the hypocrisy of politicians when they aspire for public offices has led us to these kind of situations where they make promises naturally, logically may not be deliverable, not because there are no resources to deliver them, but because there is no willingness on their part in the first instance when they were making those promises. So that kind of sets what is called an unrealistic standard in the mind of the people. But again, we must understand, talk about transparency and accountability and independence of good governance, they are not really that difficult to achieve. It's difficult if only our public officers, whether they are elected or appointed, understand the nature of their duty, commit to the nature of the oath they've taken to serve the people, and really do them. It will not be that difficult. But because of the nature of our democracy and the way we approach elections, which is a critical part of our democracy, it brings up these promises, which are not really which doesn't have good intentions behind them. And of course, they will struggle to deliver them when they get to the office. And in this instance, we need to look at this carefully. The National Assembly, being the legislative arm of government, they have power to review appropriations. So when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu brought the supplementary appropriation bill before them, naturally, in representing the interest of their constituents, they should have asked very important questions. And that was in July this year, about what's the nature of this appropriation? What are they meant for? How will it benefit their constituents? I doubt if that question was asked with the record speed within which that supplementary budget was passed, billion as a short of palliative, which of course has been denied to the National Assembly. And that again, in addition to 40 billion to buy cars. Against this background, can anyone in the National Assembly say that passing this appropriation bill and allocating this 110 billion naira to themselves can be to be said of the interest of constituents, that they have made promises when they were canvassing for their votes, they are going to use power in their interest, that they are sworn constitutional oaths when they were taking the oath of office to use power in the best interest and welfare of the just of course. You can marry that their oath with their actions. And that is what makes those electionary campaign and promises really a hypocrisy. Nigerians are, contrary to what you said, I think we know, we are aware, and that is what has led to this kind of reaction. It's that Nigerians are not aware that this kind of thing goes on. But this is just one of those absurd proof that we'll be looking for, and Nigerians have found it in the utterance by the Senate President.
All right. Now, give us an insight into the suit that you're bringing up against the Senate President. What are you praying the court?
Unfortunately, this will be one of those public interest suits that need not be filed in the first place. If public officers like the National Assembly Senate President in consonance with the law. Basically, what we intend to do, we will of course undertake formal processes of advocacy before going to court. Going to court will be a last resort in this instance. If he makes a disclosure of the amount of money paid to members of the Senate, what is the purpose of that payment? And what is the quantum, what is the percentage of this payment from the allocation of budget to national, that is from the original Appropriation Act and the Supplementary Appropriation Act, because they came as additional transfer. How much is recurrent, how much is capital? And then what is the legal basis for the payment of this money? Knowing fully well that the Revenue Allocation, Mobilization and Fiscal Commission is empowered by law to determine salaries and allowances for members of the National Assembly. And perhaps when it makes those things available to Nigerians through SERAP, if Nigerians consider it and consider it legitimate, perhaps they can be rejected. It's found not to be in line with the law, and no clear explanation is given. We will have to approach the court to compel the Senate President to do these things I've listed, which is basically in line with the rule of law and the requirement for transparency and accountability.
Aside SERAP, in a society that works and a society that is eager to see change and be better, in a Nigeria that understands what's at stake and wants to actually, start to fix things, which agencies or which branches of government should really be asking these questions that SERAP is taking upon itself now?
So the challenges we have is not because we don't have a legal framework or agencies to do the critical aspect of holding government to account. We have them enough, they are bound. Has the power to do this job. They see by nature of its mandate. The RCPC has a lot of public education and advocacy mandate in what they do, can do this. The Nigerian police as well, the national orientation agencies, the national rights commissions, because we have agencies that can undertake this kind of advocacy on behalf of the people, not necessarily as an ombudsman, but acting in the best interest of Nigerians. Knowing fully well that every agency of government, apart from these ones that I mentioned, are at the basis and at the core of the work they do to serve the people. And so when other agencies are doing actions that are against the people, it's the agency's right to correct it. But in this peculiar instance, it is so sad that this anomaly started from the process of the budgetary allocations to the National Assembly, which is by statutory transfer, by the way, without a clear breakdown of what is statutory, what is recurrent expenditure, what is capital expenditure, and then those monies are spent really retired in the sense of it, as it were, by any kind of accountability mechanism.
All right. So there's a potential, of course, that this might get to court. You're hoping that it's not the first resort, it's the last resort. There's been a number of cases that SERAP has had to take to court, unfortunately, because in our country, things haven't always been done as they should. How is it that, SERAP, I don't know that a number of these cases have been seen to a conclusion. I want you to give us an insight as to some of these cases that you've taken to court. Would you say that you've been able to see a number of them to a logical conclusion? And what is it that keeps you, going, keeps SERAP going and constantly pushing and demanding for what is right, even in situations where they're not able to get the desired result?
Yes, and that means that we're able to do our job even without holiday tokens and holiday allowances to enjoy, to do our job effectively. Of course, this legal advocacy, we understand clearly as a legal advocacy organization, will take a lot of time, given the challenges we have in the administration of justice. Of course, the problems of Nigeria did not spare the judiciary either, so there is a slow pace. But we've been fortunate, and we really bank on the judiciary. We really need to praise the judiciary in this instance, that we've had cases, even with the slow pace of justice, that we've been able to have judgments in our favor. The last in the series is a judgment that we called from the Federal High Court, Lagos, against the government of Delta State, which is basically predicated on the freedom of information request, requesting the administration of former Governor Okowa to disclose how much has been received from UBEC by way of a grant, that is Universal Basic Education Commission, and how much the state has provided at its own counterpart funding, which of course is in line with the constitutional provisions and the UBEC Act to fund primary school education. We had gone to court in 2019, if you recall, what had happened with a certain young girl about being sent from school because she couldn't pay some fees. And so we were concerned and went to court ruling in our favor just last month, declaring and mandating the Delta State government to provide this information to SERAP. Again, what the basis of this action is to ensure that state governments take the requisite action that they are supposed to do by law to provide counterpart funding, along with that provided by UBEC, to ensure that primary school education is not only effective but also affordable, and which in most places in Nigeria is not the case. And this is against the background of more than 20 million out-of-school children in Nigeria. It used to be 13 million in 2019, now it's 20 million. No, you understand the importance of such a case. That judgment is yet to be obeyed. Another one I would mention is that of Abacha, the CCTV case. It's interesting, given the nature of the issues at the heart of that case. We had gone to court in 2019 also to get details of how the loans that were gotten from China and to fix CCTVs and security surveillance equipment in Abuja had been spent. And it's very interesting that the Ministry of Justice, the Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Finance, which of course were involved in all the negotiations, pre the loan and even the subsequent disposals, denied access to such an information. And we got to court and it agreed with us and also gave another mandating government to provide this information. That judgment too is also yet to be obeyed. And that means that billions of naira that should have been used to provide security infrastructure in Abuja, to prevent some of those crimes that have been committed and that have been committed, probably most possibly ended up in private pockets, and nothing's been done about that. Another in the series that I referred to earlier was a judgment we've gotten from the court to concerning the Abacha notes. And it's very interesting that government over the years since 1999 has not been able to provide a clear and concise figure of how much of their own investigations was stolen by the late dictator. Means that whatever we get in, yes, will be relatively trickles because we don't know what we've lost. And you would agree that it is logical for us as the victims of this crime to know how much is lost. And then we can appreciate the quantum or percentage of what is recovered, and that gives us the needed impetus to use those funds for the people of Nigeria who are the primary victims. We sent an FYI request to the government in 2020. And we didn't get the information, then we ended up. And it's very interesting that the Office of the Attorney General and Minister of Finance, again, was in court to defend this case. He was saying that they do not have details of how much was stolen and recovered and the use of those funds. And it's very important for me to point out that one of the important details we requested from the government when we made that freedom of information request was details of the use of how much had come in so far. The contractors who had bidded, who won the bid to carry out these contracts, the site of such projects and the status of such projects. And we didn't get a response, and we ended up in court. And it's very instructive again that we decided the Nigerian people and ruled in favor of SERAP, compelling the government to provide this information and laying down the salient responsibility of government to be transparent and to be accountable, knowing that these funds were stolen from Nigerians. We are the victims of the theft. And so when this money is getting, we should be spent in our interest. This is just 3 out of many cases we won by the way, which is yet to be enforced as a scripture.
Yeah, it's I mean, the stories that come out of Nigeria, and sometimes it's I'm not sure what genre of TV it would fit into if it was going to be made into a TV series, but sometimes just really jaw dropping.
Thriller, fantasy, maybe.
Yes, and horror. So Oluwadare, thank you very much for stopping by. We of course would follow up and see how this case goes, and of course we'll speak with you again.